2022 and 2023, this is the year where that changes. And it's not just the access to capital problem, because I don't think that's going to be, I think money is going to flow freely for a very long time within our field. But at some point, you are so far behind that no matter how much money you throw at it, you will not catch up with your competitors.
Hi everyone, this is Sudeshna from The Abundant Psyche, and you are listening to the Not So Corporate podcast. Here we talk about all of the not so corporate things that corporate entrepreneurs do to be more successful than their peers in corporate life. And today I have with me, it's fair to call Vin a data science influencer, I think. Vin and me have 251 mutual connect. That's quite a lot of mutual connections. Anyone who is in the field of data science probably knows Vin. And if you are in data science and don't know Vin, probably just go give him a follow because he shares these amazing tips and tricks on LinkedIn. He's defined the AI ecosystem of roles as value generators for business. He teaches practitioners to be high ROI contributors to the data science value stream and builds AI strategy to create competitive advantage based on machine learning solutions. His approach comes from researching, building, and delivering products with extremely high ARR in the hundreds of millions. He's built and led teams at every phase of the machine learning life cycle. He rapidly ramps up capabilities and implements a modern machine learning workflow connecting strategy to execution. Vin, I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So if we start with what you currently do, Vin, you are a chief data scientist at V Squared. That's your own consulting firm. Is that correct?
That is.
Okay. So what does your day-to-day look like then?
It's a little bit of everything. My day-to-day is not the standard for a data scientist. I still do applied research. So I mainly function in the research life cycle. I've got a background in software development, so I can do a little bit of the machine learning engineering too. It's gotten complicated over the last couple of years, so I can't really call myself a machine learning engineer anymore. They're a lot smarter than I am and keeping up with the field and all the changes that have been made to the infrastructure side of it. I also do strategy. So there is a large component of my job, which is teaching businesses how to do data science. And I came upon that because I couldn't do any of the interesting projects I wanted to do unless I got a significant buy-in. And in many cases, all of the changes that need to happen to support data science have to come from senior leadership, the C-suite. They have to drive a number of the transformations necessary for me to do cool projects. So I got pulled back into the strategy side in order to do data science and ended up learning how to teach businesses that side of the transformation trend, teaching them how to change the business model and the operating model, and even create new business models to leverage and monetize data science and machine learning work products. And I also teach data scientists strategy. So not only am I teaching the C-suite data science, I'm teaching data scientists strategy so that they can be strategic partners for the C-suite. And so my part of it's writing content, some of it's creating educational materials. I still have hands-on coding. I still build models. I push to production, and I talk to the C-suite. I'm an advisor. I sit in on meetings and explain what needs to be done in order to really get anything more complex accomplished in the data science world. So my day is a lot of everything.
That's fascinating. And I completely agree with you. I think one of the things that I've been realizing over the years is that how big a gap there is between the strategy, which sits with the C-suite, to the execution, whereby data scientists themselves are not really thinking through, or frankly, are not even trained to think through, well, does this really generate profit and revenue for my business? And how can I make the system more efficient and productive? So how do you then bridge that gap between strategy to execution? What would you go tell C-suite to do versus what would you tell data scientists?
The C-suite's all about value. And so the most important thing you can do as a data scientist strategist is understand that the C-suite doesn't want to go any further than value. So when you're presenting as a data scientist to the C-suite, everything has to be in terms of value. You can't talk about the technologies without talking about value first. You can't say, here's the technologies and here's the opportunities. That's backwards. And so from the data science side, I explain that you have to have a completely different approach after you get to a certain level. When you get to the level of strategy, when you get to the level of value, when you start talking to senior executives and to the C-suite, and you can't get the kind of buy-in you need to make data science and machine learning successful within a business and successful as a product until you've positioned yourself as a strategic partner and you've begun to bridge the gap, as you say. And when I talk to senior leadership, I tell them, look, technology can't drive strategy. That's backwards. Strategy has to drive technology. Now, I've come up with you've got a business model and an operating model. I've built up the concept of a technology model, which allows senior leadership to manage technology from a value-centric perspective. They don't have to understand the technology. It's just the same as the operating model enables them to manage workflows without actually understanding all the work that every employee at the company does, because that's not possible. They can't be experts in every technology. Not even data scientists can be experts in every technology that we use.
Various right? No one's an expert in NLP and computer vision together. Well, maybe some people are.
You can do it at a very high level, but once you start getting into more complex use cases, trying to be somebody who can do autonomous vehicles and at the same time large-scale language models, that's too much. And so I think it's important for the C-suite to understand that all they have to do is manage value. And the technology model allows them to do that, to understand and create a thesis of why we would use any given technology, whether that's traditional software development or data science, machine learning, or whatever comes next, Web 3.0, metaverse, all of these other concepts. It's just wave after wave. And so in the C-suite, there needs to be a value-based conversation around what technologies to adopt based on the opportunities available to the business. And you begin to speak in business terms and talk about opportunities. You talk specifically to monetization strategies, pricing strategies. When you begin to break things down in that direction, the C-suite is far more responsive because they've been waiting for a data scientist to do that forever. They've been really waiting. And everyone that I teach in the class comes back with, I get, yeah, it's a great class, but more often than that, I started talking to in senior leadership, and all of a sudden I was talking to the C-suite, and all of a sudden they got it. And I get that so much, where over the course of 1 to 3 months, they're able to succeed in getting the kind of buy-in that they couldn't get before. And it's this whole concept of speaking in value and allowing senior leadership the ability to manage value and not have to worry about the technology, not get into the granularity that a lot of data science teams try to drag leadership into. And it's a powerful partnership because data science changes the way strategy is done. And as soon as a data scientist becomes a strategic partner, they can introduce business systems models. You're modeling the business systems that the company operates in. And that's another really powerful partnership between the data science team and the C-suite, because not only are they beginning to optimize the business model and the operating model, they're beginning to create opportunities for the business. They're beginning to help the business make better decisions about how it goes after opportunities, how it finds opportunities, how it competes. And there's so much that a data science team can do at a strategy level to improve the business. And then when you start introducing products to the mix, now the data science team is building out these efficiency projects. They're becoming a revenue generator. They are making the business more efficient from just a decision standpoint, so the decisions have better outcomes. There's so many benefits from a partnership between the two, and all they're missing is that common language.
I couldn't agree more. And I think most of the times there's this break that happens between the communication, whereby because of the miscommunication, what ends up happening is that tons and tons of data scientists end up running BI reports. And I think you speak a bit about that data science, what was discussed to be this glamorous career path, is now starting to look a bit shabby, because people are starting to realize that if I don't talk, or maybe people don't even realize if they don't talk a certain language, their job becomes running reports. But then running reports is also an invaluable way to present back value to the stakeholders, to the C, to your investors at the end of the day. So, how do you think the C suite leadership can bridge that gap, let data scientists do the work they thought they wanted to do in terms of fancy modeling and all of that, versus where the reality might be like, actually, most value you'll get out of the data is sometimes a summary.
It's interesting. People say, how does the C-suite build that relationship? And they already have. They built the team, they invested in it. They've adopted the technology to an extent, even if it's just reporting. They are adopting data and they're making their needs clear. But if you don't have someone at the strategy level who understands both strategy and is a practicing data scientist, the data science team can't respond. And so senior leadership in the C-suite is making that first step. They're meeting the team halfway, but the team has to come to them now because they've built the relationship by making the investment. They've built the relationship by supporting the team, by enabling the technology, by continuing to spend money and resources and time and attention. And data scientists don't realize that. There's already a relationship there, and the C-suite is waiting for us. They're saying, we did the work that we were supposed to do, your turn. Right. And if data science teams don't then understand, number one, that the relationship's there, the door's open, all they have to do is walk through it. When data science teams don't see that, they end up, because senior leadership looks at them and says, okay, so you're tacticians, you need to be managed. And that leads to the team being commoditized, meaning the cheaper, the better. They're not providing a whole lot of revenue. They're not providing growth. They're doing efficiency projects and saving us some money, but digital transformation is too. And so I don't understand how this is different than digital transformation. And the relationships there, all data scientists have to do is bridge the gap by beginning to talk to the C-suite in terms of value, bringing them opportunities. And even with reporting, you can make that relationship. You can become a strategic partner by just teaching the business about itself. Many businesses don't truly understand themselves, the marketplace, their customers. There are so many places that are opaque in the business that data can make more transparent. And that leads to the data science team becoming a partner. And those are the first earliest conversations and the way that the data science team can build relationships and to begin to create that partnership for themselves. And so when we say the C-suite isn't, what does the C-suite need to do? They did it. They've already done their part. And the next piece is really getting the data science team to build out that partnership and to reciprocate for the investment that's been put into them. And from there, then it becomes a matter of literacy. The data science team has to teach the C-suite data science literacy. The C-suite doesn't know that they need to be data science literate until the data science team comes to them and says, as the business becomes more reliant on machine learning for operational efficiency, for how the business really runs, and then eventually for growth, this is going to be the biggest growth opportunity that the business has access to probably for the next 5 to 10 years. And the business is going to become increasingly reliant on this technology. And so the C-suite I think it needs at least one data scientist at the C-suite level, but they don't all need to be data scientists at this point. They do need to have data science literacy. They don't need to understand every piece of it, but they need to understand the technology well enough that they can manage it, that they can manage an increasingly automated, machine learning dependent business, an increasingly intelligent business. And so there's a level of data science literacy, and it's the responsibility of the data science team, number one, to make them aware of that and to teach them the value of becoming data science literate, but then to teach them, to provide resources and access to training and upskilling so that the C-suite can become, over time, data science literate, and they're able to better manage their business and better understand their business as it transforms.
I love that. In fact, a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, I was talking about the top skills that a data scientist needs to have. Without telling you more about that, could I hear from your, yeah, in your view, what is the top skill that a data scientist today needs to?
The first thing to really talk about is that there is no one data scientist anymore. In your very early maturity companies that are probably not getting a whole lot of value out of their data scientists, they have a generalist who does everything. He was expected to do everything from BI and analytics all the way out to building out more advanced models and understanding deep learning technologies. And so they have this generalist, but they're not using any of the more advanced skills that the generalist has. And that was the old paradigm. And it's still the paradigm in low maturity companies. But what's changing is as data science is increasingly relied upon by the business for those efficiencies, for making the operating model more efficient, increasing margins, driving new revenue and growth opportunities. As the business becomes more reliant on data scientists, it turns into a more complex workflow. So you have a data workflow, you have a research workflow, and you have a model development workflow. And so this breaks up the data science role. And so when you say what skills are essential for a data scientist, we have to talk about, are you talking about a data librarian, a data engineer? Are you talking about an applied researcher? Are you talking about someone who's in ML engineering? Is that ML engineer platform and automation focused, where they're automating the workflow of the rest of the data science team and the model development and the ML ops? Are they customer facing, meaning that they are creating the platform around the model that allows all the other services to leverage and all the other products to build on top of this machine learning model or sets of models? And now you're talking about ML ops becoming more of a split role, where one side of it is model quality and the other side of it is more traditional ML ops, maintenance, continuous improvement, monitoring, and so on. And so critical skills for a data scientist really require you first to say, okay, what role do I really want? And then you have to talk about your industry. What industry am I going into? Because if you don't have that, you're not going to be able to understand the specific business needs and how we as data scientists solve those problems. What are the traditional approaches? What are the emerging approaches? Being a generalist is no longer feasible. You can definitely have an area of specialty like computer vision or natural language. You can have customer behavioral. I do decision support. You can have these areas of focus, and there's tons of them now. So you have a specialization at multiple levels, and it does generalize. You can be an expert in decision support systems and pretty much go anywhere. You can do computer vision and pretty much go anywhere, but that domain expertise, is it computer vision for retail and edge use cases, or is it computer vision for some other, like an autonomous? And those are two totally different problems. You're talking about somebody who has a heavy hardware focus for cameras or edge devices versus somebody who has a heavy hardware focus for edge devices on a car that are doing completely different use cases. And so you have these different niches that are building up. And so there's no one data scientist, there's no one critical skill set, there's no one career path anymore. It's a very diverse field. And anyone coming into it really has to make the decision in order to make it feasible to learn the field. Otherwise, there's too much. You can't be a generalist anymore because there's simply so much across the board that you would have to learn in order to be a generalist. And the field changes so fast, you would have to be reading research your entire day. You wouldn't have time to actually have a job if you're continuing to keep your skills up across, a number of different domains. So I don't think the generalist data scientist is possible anymore. We have to start explaining that this is a team sport, that your capabilities have to be layered on top of each other to create a team that can actually accomplish more than just a group of generalists working on projects by themselves.
I love that. And that is exactly, I think, I'm glad that you mentioned that as well. The domain expertise is probably the one thing I felt is what differentiates a great data science team from an average one person generalist or two
Right.
people generalist data science teams. That's amazing. So, Vin, I know you mentioned about 2022, 2023. You feel like this might be the point where we are getting to in the technology where there will be a fundamental shift in businesses. Can you explain that to me a bit?
I think we've been privileged as businesses that we can take money has been cheap, and with low interest rates, you can borrow, you can get investment, growth is organic. There's all of these macro factors that have enabled businesses to be able to play catch up and just quickly ramp up their capabilities in order to remain competitive in the marketplace. But this is the year 2022 and 2023. This is the year where that changes. And it's not just a access to capital problem, because I don't think that's going to be, I think money is going to flow freely for a very long time within our field. But at some point, you are so far behind that no matter how much money you throw at it, you will not catch up with your competitors. And they will, as a competitor who's machine learning first, AI first, going to be able to take market share from companies so quickly that they will no longer have access to revenue in order to do that rapid ramp up and to catch up. It will be unfeasible, both from a technology pace of change standpoint, but also from as your business begins to contract, because you have competitors who can offer products that you can't, who can create services that you cannot match, who have operational efficiencies, they have business models that are intelligent and increasingly automated, that can scale to opportunities faster than you can prevent them from, who can, using model-driven strategy, come up with these near dominant strategies. So even if the products that you and your competitors offer are equivalent, if they're good substitutes, their strategy and their capabilities to build near dominant strategies using data science and machine learning, they're going to be able to dominate marketplaces with that. And so I think we're at the point now where businesses are either committed and starting to accelerate their applications and integration of data science and machine learning just across the firm, or they are going to quickly realize near the end of this year and the beginning of next year that they're done. They're almost zombie companies that cannot, there's just no chance anymore. They're done, and just watching the ship sink, much like a Sears, who understood very early on that they were so far behind, they were never catching up. Their revenue was plummeting. And so they did not have the resources or access to talent, or all of these factors basically made Sears a zombie company for several years before they finally accepted the inevitable. And we're going to see more and more of those, and not just in retail, not just in the domains that have already experienced disruption, but I think this disruption is coming to a broader range of businesses, to a broader range of domains and marketplaces. We're going to see this mass die-off of companies who simply have not been able to execute. They haven't been able to make the transformations necessary to monetize data science and machine learning and keep up. I think that's where we are right now, is everything is moving so fast that these disruption cycles just come one after the other. And there's at some point this cliff where if you aren't capable of at least meeting a certain level and you're moving quickly towards more mature levels of, I don't think you're going to survive. And that's a horrible thing to say. And I don't want to see a ton of companies fall off the face of the earth. That would be horrible. It would be the worst possible outcome. So I want to be more active in raising the alarm that all of the things that we've been telling you at some point would happen, this is at some point. This is your last year or 18 months. If you're in a competitive industry or a competitive marketplace, this is it. This is the moment where you decide it's time to do the things we need to do in order to survive.
And I think what we are saying is that collecting data, working with data for whatever industries, even if you feel like it's something as non-data sciencey as even professional development or coaching. I'm seeing tons of startups working through data pipelines and surfacing ads through to me for those sort of things as well. So yeah, something like personal development or professional development, learning things that you would have not even considered probably could be disrupted by data science are actually surfacing new products, new ways of learning, and it feels like if it's not now, it's never. And I to be honest, sometimes do wonder, are they already too late? I don't want to be
In
the
some industries, yes, like retail, you are witnessing the last 5 years, you're witnessing the impacts that you will see broadly, that you will see across domains. And it's sudden. A company like Amazon can come in and scale because their operating model it's intelligent. It is meant to scale, and it can scale to ridiculous. And look at what they did in the pandemic. They just scaled to handle it. That's insane. You look at a Walmart, and on Black Friday, they are overwhelmed. Their stores are simply overwhelmed on Black Friday. There are some websites, e-commerce websites, that crash because they can't handle the traffic of a Black Friday or a Cyber Monday. But you look at Amazon, almost, over the course of a month, they scaled to handle an insane ramp up in demand because their operating model was built to do it. And you look at legacy companies, they simply can't take advantage of the opportunities in the same way. And so these disruptions that have come to retail are going to come to finance. They're going to come to almost everyone in manufacturing. You look at just across the board. I could spend 20 minutes answering this question, so I'll cut it short. But just across the board, you're going to see these types of, like I said, mass die-offs, because companies are no longer going to be able to keep up or catch up. It's a matter of taking market share and taking revenue to the point where the business does not have access to the type of resources they would need in order to remain competitive. And it's just this slow, painful attrition where they're watching it happen and they can't do anything about it. And I think you're right. We're going to see this year, some businesses are already too late, but it's going to, where I'm looking at it is, this is going to happen across domains. And for the majority of businesses, they're not ready. They didn't think this was coming until way, way down. This is a retail thing, or that's somebody else that, no, this is going to happen fast. It's going to be abrupt. We're going to look back on 2022 and 2023 and say, wow, that was where we began to have this hard line between, here was your digital business, here was your data-driven business, and now we are into, here's your intelligent business. And if you are not well on your way to becoming an intelligent business, or at least moving to data-driven, where you can monetize data and trying to figure out how you're going to monetize intelligence and monetize machine learning, if you're not at some point this year, if you're not there, what comes next is a hard barrier.
I couldn't agree more with that because, yeah, that's what I've been seeing in finances. So, in my day job, most of my clients are in the fintech sector. And what the pandemic has done is just moved whatever probably would have taken a decade or maybe 5 years at minimum, has just been done in like 1 year lesser. So, yeah, there's been a fundamental shift, and I think that's only accelerating with people moving around more, people trying out newer startups, and like whenever they have their free time, they are building things, and that's always going to accelerate the course of innovation. And then, like you said, there's capital coming at it like there's no tomorrow. Like, money is not a problem anymore.
And it's going to be for businesses, because businesses have a different capital flow system. They have different access and different institutions that they go to, who are looking at them in a different way than a startup would be judged, because they are two completely different types of enterprises. And so the money is flowing into startups because the risk of speculation in machine learning first and AI first startups has come down significantly. If you have a true product, if it's not vaporware, if you have a good leadership team, if you have a strong business model and operating model, if you have, all of those check boxes that used to mean, we'll get maybe 1 in 100 home runs. Now it's more like 1 in 10. And VCs are attracting these massive funds because the risk of failure for a startup is much lower. Their ability to compete with even the largest companies the barriers have dropped. The barriers to entry just aren't there because machine learning enables new business models. And those business models disrupt legacy business models. They in some cases, accidentally destroy companies that were already in the space. They don't even know they were there. If you look at Apple, when they released the iPhone with a camera on it, they weren't trying to disrupt the digital camera industry. They didn't. This was just an add-on for them to help them create some traditional features that customers would want and that would really anchor the product in customer behaviors. They didn't even think about it, but they destroyed the digital camera industry. The biggest players in digital cameras just disappeared. Their business models were so disrupted by something that was never intended to compete with them, but that ended up decimating their industry. And that's the interesting thing about data science and machine learning, very similar to putting a digital camera on a phone. It creates these business models, which by accident eliminate industries and take down these legacy business models. And I'm laughing because it is amusing that companies don't mean to do this. It's accidental. But you have to, as a business, be able to see these types of disruptions coming. You have to understand the impacts of innovation on your business model. And this is another area for data scientists to partner with senior leaders, is the data scientists have the technical expertise to look at the marketplace, if they have that strategy background, and begin to identify those threats that the business can't see. Because there are businesses who today are thinking of their traditional competitors, but next month they're going to be competing with Google because Google decided, I have a way to enter your marketplace. And you don't see that coming. So when it does, it is devastating to your business model because their business model is totally different. They monetize differently. And through that process, through their ability to leverage their best-in-class capabilities to compete across industries, they come in and just break business models overnight. And so companies really need their technical teams to be strategic partners and help them not only understand the opportunities, but also figure out there are some really terrible threats out there that companies need to today start working to figure out, if that happens next month, what would we do? Are we in a position where we would survive that disruption? And most aren't. Until they make those steps to begin to monetize data and monetize intelligence, they can't compete. They could next month be just facing extinction. That's the scary thing about how fast things are moving.
Yeah, I agree completely. And one final question on the field of data science to you, Vin. I think recently in one of your posts, you mentioned about how hard it is to be in data because, again, going back to the point where it seemed at first that this is a very glamorous field, etc. Sounds like with every passing day less. What would your advice be to the data scientists who are feeling a bit stuck in their professional setting right now? Is it to specialize and go somewhere they really enjoy? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Maybe else.
Well, you have four major career paths available to you. So that's where I'd start. Do you want to do building? You want to stay hands-on? You want to be a builder, an individual contributor? So that's path one. Path two is product. You can actually make a really big impact, helping the company build products out from not a hands-on side, but from more a product manager side. So you can go through the product route, you can even become an advocate. You can go into one of these new and emerging roles where you become a data science advocate or you become an evangelist, and they got a ton of different titles, but you can go down the product side. You can go down a traditional leadership track, and you can go down the strategy side. And so there's these four avenues available to you. And if you feel like you're stagnating, look at the four avenues and decide, okay, which one of these am I most interested in and which one provides me the greatest opportunities? And then begin to learn down that path. Don't ever lose your data science capabilities. That is core and critical. Even as a leader, your data science capabilities are important. I think in the next 5 or 10 years, leaders will be necessary at the C-suite level, not just as a chief data scientist or chief data officer, but you're going to see CTOs who must be data scientists. You're going to see other domains. I think chief marketing officers over the next 4 to 5 years will have to come from data science backgrounds. I don't think there are different roles throughout the enterprise, and it's going to be more and more organizational leaders for whom data science is a must-have capability, where board of directors are going to look at what you manage and say, how can you manage an increasingly intelligent organization, intelligent business unit, pushing forward intelligent products if you don't understand the core technology? How are you going to do that if you don't have some comprehension? And this is very different from more traditional software, because traditional software did not take over operating models. It did not create new business models in the way that data science and machine learning do. And so this is a sea change when it comes to the capabilities of leadership. And so you as a data scientist are going to have more opportunities in senior leadership and executive leadership going forward than most other leaders. You're going to have a more clear path. And from the strategy standpoint, the sky's the limit there. You have the C-suite that you have a direct line into, because they're hungry for people who are not only technologically capable and connected deeply to execution, but also strategically aware, because that's the missing link, is someone who the execution comes naturally to them. Many strategists have that shortcoming, where they are pure strategists and they don't live in the world of execution. And so sometimes their strategies are unrealistic, or the strategies are in many ways more expensive than they expected them to be, or unfeasible. So having someone who is deeply rooted in the tactical world, as well as an expert strategic practitioner, you have this opportunity in front of you. And so I would say, look at which path you want to go down. And if you're going down the individual contributor route, like we talked about, pick the area that's most interesting to you, pick the emerging role that's most interesting to you, and move your career towards where the field's going in about 2 years for that particular role.
Yeah, love that. And if I may add just one more to your brilliant set of four, is perhaps the AI ethics, ML ethics, that piece as well,
Yes,
because like you said, ML is so powerful that it can change the very structure of how you do your business. And I think we are going to see quite a lot of, invariably we'll start seeing standards, regulations around some of this stuff.
I agree. I think that's an emerging role. I think we have to mature just a little bit when it comes to regulatory structure. But you're right. And we're not far away. We're maybe a year or 2 years away from having at least the beginning of a framework and a real necessity for ethics.
Brilliant. I loved this chat, Vin. I like to ask everyone, what is that one not so corporate thing that you do that's made you so successful? Could you tell me a bit about you?
We have a way in strategy of sugarcoating things or not coming to the point as well as we should. And when you talk to practitioners or when you talk to senior leaders who are trying to learn a technology, I think being blunt and being in some ways unprofessional, it's viewed as unprofessional to say, just come out and say it. But I think we are at a point, and I've been doing this for about 6 years, where just come out and say it. We're dealing with grownups. We're dealing with adults. These are smart people. They do not lack talent. They have the ability to synthesize feedback. But when we are unclear in our language, when we don't just come out and say it, our message gets lost in the sugarcoating. So I think the not so corporate thing I do that's fairly important is just those things that we are reluctant to say out loud because we're worried about, oh, are we going to ruffle it? Just say it. People need to hear it. People are going to be disrupted by this. So we either say it and they understand what's going on, or we keep sugarcoating it and they say, it's a couple of years away, or no, it doesn't seem to be relevant to me, or you can find ways to avoid and deflect. If you come right to it and just say what things are, talk about how it is, and call out what's broken. Those are the things I think people have viewed them as unprofessional, but I think my clients really value the fact that I will just come out and say what needs to be said, and then we figure out some solutions. Here's what broken. Here's what's broken. Here's what doesn't work. Here's the data that supports that, and here's what we do to fix it. Here's the 1, 2, 3 slideshow. We're done. Let's get to work. And I think that's missing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. To be honest, I'm guilty of that sometimes, sugarcoating things. But yes, like you either do them a favor now or they repent for it 5 years
Why
later.
didn't you just say that? Very early in my career, I think it was 2007, 2008, I gave someone some sugar-coated advice and they didn't take it because they didn't understand it. And a few months later, when all of the things that we knew were going to happen happened, it was a VP who just said, "Why didn't you just say that? Why didn't you just say?" Because we all said, "We told you in this presentation, we told you this was going to happen." They said, "No, you didn't. You said this other thing and this other thing. Why didn't you just come out and say this?" And from then on, it was like that was a transformational moment. Why don't I just come out and say it? Senior leaders want somebody to just tell them the truth, what's really happening, and back it up with data. That's the wonderful thing about data scientists in the C-suite, is we don't just give them an opinion. We say, here's what's happening and here's evidence.
Love that. This has been such a pleasure, Vin, and we'll hope to see you sometime again on this podcast. And for any
Definitely.
of you listening, go follow Vin.
You can follow me on LinkedIn. A quick Google search, if you just do Vin and my impossible to spell Vashishta last name, you'll find all the places and ability to interact with me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter. I've got a Substack that I post very regularly too, and you can find my classes on Teachable. So I am easy to discover.
So thank you so much, and go give Vin a follow and share this podcast with any data science folks out there, because I think this has been really educational. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks for having me. Great questions. Really appreciate it.